We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. You're listening to this on Wednesday, but we're recording it Tuesday night on a Substack Live. It's been a little while since I've done a Substack Live all by my lonesome, so I thought, what the hell? We'll sit down, we'll talk a bit. There's a lot of great folks that come into the lives, and I love hearing from you. And again, I'll remind you, your participation in this live is absolutely crucial. I mean, I could sit here and talk for an hour straight without any interjection by the audience, but it's so much better when people join in, ask questions, kind of lead us down different paths, and we can talk about all the things you want to talk about as opposed to what I pull out of my ass. So I encourage you to participate and join in the conversation here. I only wish we could do something like we do on TikTok where we could pull you up and actually talk to you. We can't in this situation, so we'll have to use the comments, and that's fine too. We're happy to hear from you that way. I was just looking at some of the news stories that have been coming out over the last day, and we of course know the situation with the Epstein files. All these Epstein files came out, 3 million Epstein files, and it's going to take some time for people to go through it completely to know exactly what's there. But every day, every time I turn on the television or go on the internet, somebody's come up with a new revelation of something that's come out of the Epstein files. And every time it's more and more horrific. I mean, it's some of the craziest shit you fucking heard. It sounds like stuff of conspiracy theories. What's weird about it reminds us of what the Republicans were talking about prior to the 2024 election. The Democratic cabal, the PDF files, Pizzagate, and all that stuff. That all sounded crazy. And so we just kind of dismissed it. Now, as we read what's going on in the Epstein files at this point, it's not that far off. I mean, it's just that fucking crazy. It's hard to imagine there are people that twisted and that sick out there. But apparently it's true. Apparently it's true. The most interesting thing that came out of the Epstein files was Donald Trump's response. He said, well, the Epstein files came out and I was absolved. I don't know if he's just trying to gaslight us or the people around him are just telling him it's fine. But he was not exonerated. He was not still suspect. In fact, there were so many things in this about him being involved sexually with underage girls and toying with the idea of unaliving some girls. Again, these are all tips and that sort of thing that come in from the FBI, and none of it is actual evidence that anything went on. But I'm guessing there's some photos in there that give us some interesting evidence. But even if there is no evidence in those files that came out, there certainly is justification for investigating the shit. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this. We've got all these complaints. We've got all these witnesses. We've got these emails. Yet nobody's thought to do any kind of investigation. Now, if it's all bullshit, that's fine, but still you've got to weed it out. You've got to get the evidence from the investigations and then see what you've got. Instead, they just fucking ignore it. They just set it aside. And the only reason that would happen is because it involved old, white, rich, powerful men. They gave them a pass. And we've got to make sure they don't get that pass, because what we're hearing about what happened is absolutely horrific. I mean, destroyed lives, maybe cost people lives. You don't just get away with that kind of shit. All right, Gen X JB says, wouldn't it be sly of those nations in Europe to investigate Epstein just to get Trump busted? Well, I'm not so sure they haven't. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing. But here's what we do know. The royal family in England sure kicked Prince Andrew to the curb quick, far before we heard any of these things. So I'm guessing that the royal family maybe has a lot of this evidence already. I'm thinking a lot of people do have this evidence or bits and pieces. And that's kind of what I'm waiting for, is somebody to leak something out. Vincent Johnny says, can't believe PP managed to survive the CPC leader review. Yeah. Scott Dunn says it's gaslighting. Spacer says, I guess that means the Conservatives of Canada won't be winning any elections anytime soon. Well, we would hope not. I don't know why anybody would vote for a Conservative at this point based on their track record. Spacer says, someone tell me why ICE is going to Italy for the Olympics. Are they hoping to deport Italians from Italy? Yeah, I found that kind of weird too. It does sound like something Donald Trump would do because he's all about attention, but they have no authority in Italy, and Italy doesn't even have to let them in the motherfucking country. I'd be surprised if they did. They should meet them at the border and kick their sorry asses out. There's no question about it. TJ the Plumber says Melania was a flop. The World Cup will be too. Nobody wants to come here from abroad. Yeah, that movie about Melania, that was nothing but fake news, promotion, fluff, bullshit, trying to garner attention, and at the same time grifting money from Jeff Bezos. That's what that was about. But I think Melania is a little hurt that nobody went to see the motherfucking thing. And what'd she expect? She hasn't done anything. She claimed to be a supermodel and nobody can find a portfolio for her. She claimed to be super smart, and that's why she got let into this country, but there's been no evidence of that. I mean, how smart can a motherfucker be if she marries Donald Trump? That doesn't show too much intelligence in my book. Michael Catlett says, I don't consider Republicans conservative. Absolutely. They have no resemblance to what we once knew as conservative. Now, I didn't like the conservatives in the first place, but these people are hardly conservative when you add trillions of dollars to the debt. Vincent Johnny says Maple MAGA is making a fuss that Epstein's mentioned Carney in his emails. The context was Carney was the banking governor of UK and Canada. Epstein also mentioned Trudeau because Canada wouldn't let him in the country. Yeah. I mean, there are people mentioned in it, but that doesn't mean they had anything to do with it. But if you were attending the parties, Todd Blanche said something on television. Somebody was pressing him about the pictures with the people at the party, and Laura Ingraham pushed him and said, would you be investigating those people that were at the party? And what he said, a lawyer, Deputy Attorney General, says it's not illegal to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Where the fuck? How does somebody with years of legal education come up with that shit? First of all, it's not true. If these people are in a location where there is trafficking going on, they are accessories after the fact. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm also not stupid, but apparently Todd Blanche is. Spacer says, I saw the Republican National Convention had to buy mass amounts of tickets for that Melania movie just to save face. Yeah, it's kind of like, I think, didn't Don Jr. write a book too, and they ended up buying all the books to get him on the bestsellers list? That's the only book on the bestsellers list that nobody ever fucking read. It's probably sitting in a room next to top secret documents in Mar-a-Lago, probably the bathroom. Analytical Iowan, Trump will be blindsided when the Republicans turn on him over Epstein. The people around him haven't told him how bad it really is. Yeah, Donald Trump is so delusional, so stupid. He probably will get blindsided. I mean, anybody with half a brain could see, I'm in fucking trouble now. I better start dog paddling because I may not make this. I don't really think Donald Trump has the wherewithal. He's so deep into his narcissism that he always thinks he's winning, even though he's getting his ass kicked. And if he gets his ass kicked, then he just pivots and goes someplace else. TJ the Plumber said she bitched about Christmas decorations. That was Melania, of course. Bud Jones says she's a prostitute. Now, that may sound like a mean thing to say, but Michael Wolff, who Melania was going to sue, and then she backed off because he sued her in return. But he's basically said that Donald Trump met Melania through Jeffrey Epstein. So here's an Eastern European woman, young, very young at the time, friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and she is introduced to Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. Seems a little suspect, doesn't it? Seems like maybe a little suspicious. Pam, going to Italy is probably just so the ice rednecks can see what an actual trip is like. Yeah, maybe. Erica Kirk grifting on Charlie Kirk death, only caring about sales and other stuff. Yeah, there's, I'm not trying to put out any kind of conspiracy theory, but there's something very weird about Erica Kirk. I mean, if I cared a little bit about Charlie Kirk, and I don't, I would maybe care more about Erica Kirk, but there's some weird shit going on there. She's a strange, strange woman, and there's something that's just off about her in her eyes, the way she talks, the fact that she's had no grief over the death of her husband. I mean, it sounds like it's just been another business deal, and she's trying to come out of it making money, which she probably is. Spacer says, I was watching Jimmy Kimmel today, and he showed a clip of Trump being pissy about Trevor Noah. Then he mentions Kimmel. Kimmel lives rent-free in his head. You know, Trump isn't running the country because he's always pitching about award shows. Yeah. I heard he was mad at Trevor Noah, and it was interesting because the Grammys, as I understand it, all the stars stood up and talked shit about Donald Trump. And this is what Donald Trump hates because it's all about perspective or perception of him. He thinks everybody in the world loves him, that he's the most popular man in the world. When he sees more and more people going up against him, like these stars, like sports athletes, like the polls, he doesn't understand it because he's brilliant. He's the smartest guy in the world. He's doing all the right things. Vincent Johnny says, will the U.S. dollar survive after Trump pick for banking Fed goes through? I don't know. That's supposed to happen in May. And we'll see what happens if this particular Fed chair does what Donald Trump wants him to do. I mean, it could be devastating to the economy if they just drop the interest rates to nothing. Donald Trump thinks it will save his economy, but at the same time, it's going to destroy the economy. But Donald Trump is so stupid and so delusional that he may not understand that. You would hope the people he hires would understand that and push back. But we've seen lawyer after lawyer after lawyer do exactly what Donald Trump wants them to do, even though it's embarrassing for them and even though it's stupid. But they just bend the knee and do whatever he says. I don't know if he creates that much fear in them or they're just so stupid that they think he's right. It's got to be the latter because you can't go through and get a legal education and not know some of this stupid shit like Todd Blanche. I mean, Jesus Christ. I don't know if you heard there was a prosecutor, and I think it might have been New York. This prosecutor has been dealing so much with ICE agents. She's a prosecutor for the federal government, and she's got just this list of lawsuits against ICE, and she's so frustrated and so tired of trying to sell the same shit over and over again. She said to the judge, please find me in contempt, put me in a prison cell so I can at least sleep for 24 hours. This system sucks, and this job sucks. That's what she said in court. Now, there's a woman that's a little frustrated at this point. Vincent Johnny says a bunch of prosperity projects pop up in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. I wonder where they got their money from. MAGA is trying to fracture Canada from within. You would think they got enough going on here in the United States. But Donald Trump is kind of scattered. he's coming up and doing stupid things sporadically. Once it's Greenland, then it's Venezuela. What's going on in Venezuela now? We go in there, we bomb them, we grab Maduro, and we haven't done anything else. Maybe stole a few tankers of oil, but beyond that, we haven't done anything to change the regime or do anything like that. And that woman who gave him, Machado, who gave him the Nobel Peace Prize, I think was hoping that he'd put her in position as president, but of course that didn't happen. I mean, how many times do you have to see Donald Trump throw people under the bus and rip them off, and before you decide not to follow that process, because you're going to get fucked by Donald Trump every time. Nicki Minaj was on Twitter trashing the Grammys and how other singers were trashing Trump. When you are a coward, you lose the argument. Yeah, I don't know what's up with Nicki Minaj. Nicki's a little angry, though. She got a gold card from Donald Trump, and she thought that was her citizenship. The Trump administration said, yeah, no, that's not what that is. So she's a little angry about that, but she basically tanked her whole career to side with Donald Trump. And I don't understand that, because anybody with common sense would see that Donald Trump is starting to spiral. Donald Trump is starting to fade. It will be over soon, and you'll be standing there holding the bag looking stupid as fuck. But apparently Nicki Minaj doesn't matter. Analytical Iowan says if they drop the rates too far, too fast, it would be worse than the 1929 stock market crash. You would hope that the oligarchs, the wealthy people that have supported Donald Trump all this time, would understand that. And if they understood that they would somehow try to stop him. Maybe the Republicans, maybe the wealthy people. But I can't believe that they would be on board for him just to crash everything for everybody, including them. That doesn't make any sense. Vincent Johnny says Canada trade deals so far, EU, Malaysia, China, and the next trade deal is India. I'm sorry. Thinking Indiana. I was talking to Trucker T yesterday. Yeah, that's what's happening. All these people are just finding trade partners elsewhere. And the thing about it is once they do that, it's going to be hard to get them back even after Donald Trump is gone. Donald Trump is doing some permanent damage to this country, and you would think Republicans would see this and try to stop it, but apparently they're too fucking cowardly. Spacer says, I saw France is following through on their investigations of Elon. We might see full EU crimes for him. Yeah, didn't they raid his ex office buildings there, Twitter office buildings in France? They raided them. I don't know what they were looking for, but you can almost guarantee that Elon Musk is doing something criminal. That would be interesting if he was prosecuted in other countries around the world. Vincent Johnny, hope the people of Minnesota get the Nobel Peace Prize to spite Donald Trump. I do too. I think that's hilarious. The nominations are made by the end of January every year. Donald Trump was not nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, go figure. But the city of Minneapolis and its occupants were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And later this year, when we find out who the Nobel Peace Prize winner is, hopefully it is Minneapolis, and Donald Trump will lose his shit, because not only did he not win it again, but he caused somebody else to win it in spite of him. Trevor Lee says Trump and his kids have to testify before Congress. Ultimately, they do, but it's probably not going to happen up until the time that Trump is out of power. Eric says when Trump is gone, Republicans will probably need a generation or more to rebuild. Well, let's hope that's true. Eric and I have talked about this a bit. If it got so bad that they may not get back in power for 20 years, much like what happened after the Depression. And that's distinctly possible. Hopefully we don't have to get as bad as the Depression to have that happen. But I can't imagine why anybody would want to vote Republican at this point. I mean, we're seeing the special elections, the election down in Texas. The Republicans are getting mollywopped. They aren't even coming close. The election down in Texas, um, the Democrat won by 14 points. Donald Trump, less than a year before, won that area by 17 points. So there's a 31-point shift in a district in fucking Texas, of all places. Now, this part of Texas, it's near Houston, I think, has not voted for anybody blue since like the early 90s. So there's something going on here. And make no mistake, the Republicans are recognizing that and noticing it, and they're worried. Trevor Lee says Liam's family should file a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security for kidnapping their son. Absolutely should, and I would suspect that they will. And they'll probably win. You know, it may take a couple, 3 years to get this done, but that's all the better because Donald Trump won't be around at that point. Scott Dunn says they're drunk on power. You know, there's some truth to that. You know, when you get drunk on power, you know, you do the things that you want to do, but when you get so affected by the power you have and you just start doing everything, crazy things, there's certain truth to getting drunk on power. Spacer says you may want to ask Jace in the future, what do you think about this fight between Crockett and Tallarico? Allred endorsed Crockett today because Tallarico called Allred a mediocre black man. Crockett is also supposedly receiving money from Pelosi super PACs. Allred is a joke. The Texas Democratic race is getting messy, and I hope it doesn't ruin our chances there as long as a Democrat gets in. You know, Jason and I have talked about Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett in that Senate run. I like Tallarico a lot. I think Jasmine Crockett is more of what we need. We need fighters in our Congress to go up against these Trump-fucks, these Republicans. I like Tallarico a lot. I would rather see Tallarico run for a House position, get that experience, because he's not in the federal government. He's in state government. He's a state legislator. He's very good. He's very religious, but the good kind. And he's young enough where he's going to make some mistakes. And it sounds like if he said that about Allred, that was a mistake. That was a dumb thing to say. I don't know that he did absolutely say that, but I kind of prefer Jasmine Crockett winning that just to spite the Republicans. They thought they kicked her out of the House, and then she comes roaring back in the Senate to raise holy hell. We need more people like her. We need Tallarico in Congress, too. I just don't know if that Senate seat is quite the right position for him. Vincent Johnny says American soldiers in Nigeria. Had not heard about that. Not surprised. Donald Trump's got the military going all over the fucking world for no apparent reason. Spacer says we also shot down an Iranian jet in international waters. Here we go. Now, Spacer, I don't know the story as well as I should. I don't think it was a jet. I think it was a drone. Still, not quite as bad as a jet, but I think it was a drone. Somebody check that out. Eric will probably have that information. But you're right. America did shoot something Iranian down, and you have to wonder if we're getting closer to bombing or sending people into Iran. That's all the fuck we need at this point. Sharon says one theory behind the Venezuela takeover is to make a deal with Maduro to confess to election interference prior to the election, whether it was 2020 or 2024. When the deal is made, he gets his release, and the regime will seize the opportunity to take over our midterm elections so states lose power to control our own elections. Well, Sharon, I understand your point. Seems like a bit of a reach. I don't know how Maduro could have that much impact over American elections. But the thing with Donald Trump, it doesn't really matter, um, if it's real. He just needs something to argue. I've said this about him going down to Georgia. He went down there to get the 2020 election, ballots and all that stuff, and he wants to somehow prove that he didn't lose in 2020. That's how small-minded he is. He's still aching about losing in 2020, and he so much wants to prove that, that he didn't lose, which he won't be able to do. I think part of why they went down there too is, come the election, they want something to argue with. Well, we saw the voter rolls and we saw this happen. They'll make some shit up and try to put some question into the election. I don't think it will work. I don't think this whole concept Donald Trump has, when they went into Georgia, it was so confused and so fucked up. I don't think they really knew what they were going to do with whatever they found. I think it was more a performative thing for them just to show their power. But as I've always said, Donald Trump always fucks up. That's the one thing you can count on. Let's see here. Spacer says over the next few months, we have a chance to get a chance to fill Cheryl's old seat in New Jersey with a progressive woman. Fascist fighter Kat Abaguzala is having her primary next month and a couple of others. Everyone vote in your primaries. Absolutely. I've said this to a lot of young people, and I'll say it here, assuming there's some young people out there. If you haven't been involved in politics, if you haven't voted much, now is the time to do it. You have to understand, if you don't get involved and put the people you want into position, you're going to have old motherfuckers like me decide things that will affect you as you get older and will already be dead. You don't want that. You want control over your own destiny. So make sure you have the representation and the power in your votes. Um, Eric says young people got burned by Republicans. They thought they were fear mongering or just hating on Trump. Most of what we warned about came true. Some younger people didn't think his administration would be this bad. I don't think anybody that voted for Donald Trump thought they would be this bad. However, there are still some people that are sticking with him because they can't admit they're wrong, and they're trying to twist and turn and pervert all the information to make Donald Trump look good, and that's just not possible these days. Sharon says, "What's going to happen with full county rate of election records and the voter rolls?" I don't know that anything's going to happen. He went and got the voter rolls for 2020. That's 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Like I say, it's more performative with Donald Trump. I think he wants to go in there, and then when he loses Georgia, he can say, "Oh, we were all over in there. There's all kinds of uh, corruption in there," and try to have an argument or to make an argument about something. I don't know that there's anything he can do. He's talking about nationalizing the elections. He doesn't have the authority to do that. And Republicans don't have a taste for him to do that. He's just spitballing. He's throwing things out. He's throwing out a test balloon to see if anybody jumps on board. Eric says, I'm thinking Crockett could win the primary and possibly flip Texas. I do too. I do too. I mean, once it gets down to debates with Cornyn or whoever it is, Paxton, Crockett's going to go on a tear. She's going to chew them up and spit them out. Tallarico would do a good job too, but I think he's a little too passive at this point. He's strong, he's smart, he's a good talker, but we're in the middle of a fucking street fight right now. We don't need somebody who is not a street fighter, and I think we can all admit that Jasmine Crockett is a street fighter. Vincent Johnny says former Governor Jesse Ventura says Minnesota would probably be better off as part of Canada. That's probably true. That's probably true. We would probably be better off. But you have to understand, Jesse's kind of a fucking goof. he was an okay governor. The people around him sucked. I only know this because I worked in state government at the time, and I dealt with a lot of the people around him, and they were not good people. They were not smart people. And Jesse's not that brilliant either. He's smarter than Donald Trump, but he didn't understand the business of government when he came in. He wasn't experienced in it. He was a mayor of a smaller town. Eric says Trump thinks military use is like playing Risk. Yeah, I think he does look at it as a fucking game, to be perfectly honest with you. It's all a ploy to try to get people to like him, and it's not working very well. So this is why he's trying to do all these things to get people to like him, to get popularity back. And all it's doing is fading. As I've looked at the polls right now, I've seen 3 polls. One says he's at 36% approval rating, one says 37, and one says 38. But even 38 is a fucking disaster for Donald Trump or any other politician. Spacer says if DeSantis goes through with this gerrymandering, I hope Maxwell Frost runs for something bigger, maybe against Rick Scott for senator of Florida. Well, they better get on this if that's what they want to do is gerrymander it, because we're less than a year away from the midterms. They're going to have to do some shit. And, Ron DeSantis, not the smartest motherfucker in the world. I don't know if he can get it done in time, but Maxwell Frost is an excellent politician. He's a young kid, but he's pretty impressive. Vincent Johnny says Watergate will probably be another Tuesday if it happened in this current time. Oh, fuck yeah. I mean, just the Epstein files coming out, naming people, including the President of the United States, would be enough to shut things down back then. Somebody breaking into a headquarters? That is just another fucking Tuesday these days. All right, Eric comes through for me. It was an Iranian attack drone. It approached the USS Abraham Lincoln that was helping a U.S. oil tanker in the area. So it was a drone. That doesn't make it any less egregious. But it wasn't a plane, it was a drone, an attack drone. Um, Eric says, fight like hell for the people you want in the primary, but back primary winner in November. Yeah, there's no time to get wishy-washy. Pick somebody, back them to the hilt, and make sure they get elected. There are more Democrats than there are Republicans. It can be done. Kamala Harris would have won in 2024 had 9 or 10 million Democrats didn't stay at home and sit on their ass. If they got up and voted, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. So as much as I hate the Trump-fucks, I also have some irritation with the people too lazy to vote or don't think it's important enough. Spacer says Springfield is rallying in support of Haitians here. Yeah, it sounds like Donald Trump wants to go to Ohio and start rounding up Haitians. I mean, they are people of color, so anybody's fair game when it comes to Donald Trump, and they happen to be brown. Sylvia says we need a strong, outspoken person like Jasmine Crockett. We do. We need people like that in all of government. We keep hearing how the approval rating of Democrats is down, very low. And that is because the Democrats are perceived as weak. There's a quick way to remedy that situation, and that would be to get rid of all the current leaders, the Chuck Schumers, the Hakeem Jeffries. Those people give the perception of the Democrats being weak. If we had somebody as a leader in Jasmine Crockett or Jamie Raskin or somebody like that, it would be a whole different perspective and perception of the Democratic Party, and that would fix things pretty quickly. Scott Dunn says voter rolls are red herring, but they will say there were anomalies, then use it to seize voting machines. They have their ICE goons to assist. I don't know if they're going to have any luck seizing voting machines. I personally don't think Donald Trump makes it to 2026 elections, and then that changes the perspective on everything. Eric says, my dog leaves things in the yard smarter than Trump. Yeah, I've seen your dog, Cecilia. I have no question in my mind. Scott Dunn says, "We can't contest that if they have them, um, if they can get them." Uh, they wanted to do it last time, and they couldn't get it done. You gotta understand, Donald Trump may not be here during the 2026 elections for the midterms. He doesn't look healthy. He's doing crazy shit. He could get impeached. He could choke on a Big Mac. He could do any number of things. But as time goes on, he gets weaker and weaker and weaker. His ability to do things is getting to be harder and harder for him. Leslie says, "Does anyone think the Dems will make any headway reorganizing ICE? They have 2 weeks to get the agreement. Sure hope they don't cave in." Yeah, that's the thing. They passed the continuing resolution, but it's only for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, they got to figure out something for ICE. Um, Apparently, the Republicans have given in on putting body cams on all the ICE members, which who fucking cares? They don't care if they're doing illegal things at this point. Democrats want them to not wear masks anymore. Republicans are fighting hard about that. There was some talk amongst some people that said if they had to take off their masks, that they would probably lose 80% of ICE. They would quit. And that would probably be a good move because they think they're hiding now, but they're not. Um, we know who killed Alex Preddy, two Hispanic border agents. We know who killed Renee Good, Jonathan Ross. These people can be found out, and they are going to pay a price when this is all said and done. They are going to probably be prosecuted because there is no statute of limitation on murder. Spacer says, "What is your take on this? I had a person a couple of days ago tell me how Democrats are the dividers because the establishment likes to tiptoe around the touchy stuff while the progressives want to fight. That's why Democrats are untrusted because the establishment likes to divide issues." I think both parties have that problem. We have divided party on the Republican side, and we without question have division on the Democratic side. We do have the progressives that want to fight, but remember, the progressives may be why Kamala Harris lost. They didn't get exactly what they wanted, so they crossed their arms and said, "Fuck it, I'm not going to vote." Well, thank you very much for what you gave us. Um, I don't I don't think it's just that I think the Democrats do have some culpability when it comes to division, just by virtue of the different groups in the Democratic Party. I think the Republicans do too. I think our government and the way it's being run currently is a fucking mess. Um, and I think we got to blame everybody about this. They took machines from Georgia. Those will have to be replaced, I assume. I hadn't heard that they'd taken any machines. I heard they took 700 boxes of whatever the fuck they got. Um, I hadn't heard they'd taken machines. I'd have to check into that before I owned up to that. I don't like to say things that I don't know for sure. Um, hey, stop insulting vulva neck POTUS. He's the only one that gathered the worst team ever. Dems can't top that ever. Well, that's true. SM says, "What if Trump makes it to 2026? Then what will be your answer?" It's my answer, same answer as I always give. And history proves me to be right. Donald Trump doesn't really have a strategy or a plan. He never does. He's just doing things. He's in a spiral phase and he's trying everything. But here's the one thing you can be sure of. The one thing you can be sure of, and just take a look around at all the things he does. Whatever idea, whatever plan he has, he always fails. He always fucks up. So as much as he might live to 2026, do I think that will make a difference? No, because I think that Donald Trump will fuck it up. I don't think Donald Trump really has a plan, a good plan anyway, to do something with the elections. He's just spinning around grabbing at anything. Diane says he gets agitated and rude to female reporters asking about Epstein. Yeah, he got mad at Caitlin Collins today. That was funny. And what he says, "I don't think I've ever seen you smile. You don't smile. You're one of the worst reporters." Here's a woman who's a legitimate reporter, and you try to diminish her down to a little girl who doesn't smile. Yeah, that's not going to play very well. Eric says ICE isn't getting paid both regular pay and bonuses and having trouble getting their insurance. I've heard this. I understand there's some threads on Reddit where these ICE agents get together and they're asking questions of one another. Hey, when do I get my bonus? Well, you're not getting the whole bonus. You'll get part of the bonus. And then after taxes, it's less of a bonus. Other people saying, well, I'm not getting my first paycheck yet. And other people saying, I'm not getting my health care. Who does that surprise? I mean, who in their right mind would take a deal from Donald Trump where he said, listen, I want you to do this stuff. I want you to work hard and go out there and do this stuff, and I'll get you with some money later. If you listen to Donald Trump telling you or promising you something in exchange for something else, and you buy into it, you're a dumb motherfucker. Um, Incandescent Light says, call your elected officials and tell them to stop funding a standing army in our city streets. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and CBP need to get along with, uh, um, hold on, need to go along with all the concentration camps. Yeah. Yeah, we do need to reach out to our representatives. Um, I don't have a lot of confidence in our reps. They seem to cave a lot. I don't know what's going to happen with this situation, but I will tell you this, anybody that votes to give ICE more money, they're going to have some problems come 2026. And I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats. If it passes and ICE gets more money, we need to take the names that voted for it and promote the shit out of it so people understand that these people support the killing and kidnapping in the streets of our cities. Democrats need to all fly to Minneapolis and stand on the front lines. They might grow a pair. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I live in a suburb of Minneapolis. I grew up in South Minneapolis, not far from where all this shit is going on. I'm very familiar with that part of town. And I've always said, you can talk about Minnesota nice, but one thing you have to understand about Minnesotans, don't fuck with them because they will fight you. They will fight you. And they're showing that now, you've got 3,000 ICE agents in there or Border Patrol agents, and 70,000 people show up in the streets. Minnesota's not fucking around, and it doesn't surprise me at this point. SM says, but although there are breaks in the Republican Party, most of them still support Donald Trump through possible defeat before 11/26. Yeah, well, I think that is a breaking point. If they get wiped out in November of 2026, they're going to, well, they should kick Donald Trump to the curb. That would be the common sense thing for them to do. I think people are already pulling back from Donald Trump. They're not making it public yet because they're fucking cowards. But Donald Trump is losing some support. Not enough to make a difference as yet, but his support is slowly but surely starting to dissipate. Trump is trying to remove Black and Native history. That's exactly what he's doing, and it's appalling. Fucking absolutely appalling. You've got Native American folks here that are the furthest thing from illegal immigrants, and because they have brown skin, people are picking them up and putting them in detention centers. Yeah, it's hard to believe that this is even the United States of America. Vincent Johnny says, glad a potential Canadian boycott stopped the sale of a warehouse to ICE. Yeah, that was good. Trevor Lee says, There are 9 other states in the country that are fighting against Section 504 and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Eric says, I still believe that when the Republicans turn on Trump, it will be like a dog pile. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. That's how it works. Once Donald Trump loses footing and people start attacking him, then everybody's going to attack him. He won't be able to survive that. He'll either get impeached or he'll run away or he'll do something. But once there's a break, there are people just waiting to jump on top of the pile on top of Donald Trump. And that day will come. I'm a little disconcerted by the fact that it's taken this long. I thought that would happen much quicker, but we're getting closer and closer with all that Donald Trump is doing. He says the most outrageous things, and it's ridiculous, and it's starting to take its toll. Incandescent Light says Minnesotans are badass. No doubt there'll be history books as a battle that saves our country. I believe it. That's distinctly possible. And I'm not surprised by Minnesotans being one myself. There are people that believe in what's right. They believe in standing with their neighbors and friends and family. And they're showing it every day here in Minnesota and Minneapolis. These motherfuckers were out there in full force in minus 10-degree temperatures. Think about that. Yet there are Democrats that couldn't get off the couch to vote in November. That's why when you look at the percentage of people that vote, Minnesota is generally the highest. Most people get out and actually vote. They have the highest voter percentage in the country. Hodiner says, joining late, is Trump trying to make the World Cup fail with the visa edict? Does Congress make laws, or does a president have more latitude when it comes to international regulations? Well, let's be honest. Donald Trump has caused the Congress to be impotent, much like he is, in a different way. And Congress, the Republicans anyway, have just allowed him to do it. We're going to have to do something to get back some power and control in Congress once we eradicate some of these sorry Trump motherfuckers. Let's see here. Rita Graham says, I can see him taking all his ill-gotten riches and hightailing it to Russia. I don't think he'll go to Russia. I don't think, the thing about it is Vladimir Putin acts like his friend. I don't think he really likes him. I think he thinks he's a dumbass. He's using him for all he's worth, and then when he's not worth anything, they'll just kick him to the curb too. If he goes someplace, it would be someplace in my mind like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, or maybe Qatar, where he put that $500 million that he got from stealing that tanker full of oil. I think he's more likely to go someplace like that. I also wanted to talk about something, too, that's going on that I think is very critical and kind of scary. We heard this story about a whistleblower who made a complaint against Tulsi Gabbard. And apparently this complaint is so serious that it could risk our national security. Now, this complaint was put into a vault and locked up because this is how Donald Trump does things. He gets bad news. He tries to put it off. He tries to get people to forget about it. But this is pretty serious because not only is he required to give it to Congress to deal with it, he should put Tulsi Gabbard on the sidelines. Now, Congress has yet to see it. It's sitting there in the vault. It's dangerous. It's putting our national security at risk. And Tulsi Gabbard is still in charge of U.S. Intelligence. And for some reason, she shows up to Fulton County Election Office to oversee what was going when they were stealing these boxes of ballots. There's something very weird going on there, and there's something that's probably pretty dangerous. And as it's par for Donald Trump to say, let's just ignore it. You remember when he did that with COVID? We'll just ignore it. Nothing happened. It's no big deal. 1 million people die, but what the fuck? Shit happens. Spacer says the Middle East countries wouldn't have use for him. They get rid of him and just claim the money Trump put there. There's something to be said for that. That's true. You know what they did to that journalist? They can dispose of people very quickly. And the idea of stealing all their money, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope something like that fucking happens. Maybe he does go to the Middle East and they say, you're not worth anything anymore to us, and leave him out in the desert by himself, shitting himself to death. Vincent Johnny says the U.S. loses its soft power. Canada uses its soft power with tourism, showing the world that you can travel in Canada safely. Yeah, I think that's one thing that people don't understand. The amount of tourism this country has lost is immense. Now, not all states have tourism as a main part of their business, but Florida does. Texas does. A lot of these red states, New Orleans does. Nobody's going to Vegas to gamble anymore. This is costing people a lot of money. It's also costing people a lot of fucking jobs too. So, um, there's going to be some pushback eventually. I mean, they can only take so much poverty and high prices and starving and not being able to find jobs. How long is it going to take before these MAGA fucks get tired of that bullshit? All right, Spacer says, remember statesman versus politician, future versus the next election. We need to think about the next generation. I agree. And honestly, doing what I do on TikTok and Substack and YouTube and all this isn't so much for me. I'm 65 years old. My life is pretty well set until I die. Nothing's really going to change much. I'm not out there looking for a job or anything like that. What concerns me most is what kind of country are we going to leave for my kids and even my grandkids? Like I said before, we got a bunch of old white motherfuckers making decisions that will go on into the future after we're all dead, and then our kids and grandkids are going to have to live with that bullshit. That's why it's important for us old folks to keep fighting, because it'd be nice to leave this place a little better than when we found it. Panzer says, yeah, let's all inject ourselves with some bleach. Tell you what, the Republicans can go first, show us how it's done, and then we'll consider it. Fucking. Uh, so Donnie Trump thinks he's absolved from the Epstein files, but you can see what happens anytime somebody asks him about it. He gets a little skeezy about it. He's nervous about it. And so what we need to do is keep having um, journalists ask him about the Epstein files. It will drive him nuts. He will say something stupid. He'll crack under the pressure. You got to keep asking him. Spacer says, you boomer, you are a statesman. The whole rational gang are statesmen. Thank you for caring about my and future generations. But I don't know if I'm a statesman. I'm a loudmouth guy, old guy sitting in his living room, pissed off about what's going on. And frankly, I think the entire country should be pissed off about what's going on. I know people in this audience, um, people on TikTok and YouTube that follow me, they're all pissed off. But we've got certain groups of people, the Republicans, that not only aren't pissed off, but they support this. It's probably going to take some pain for them to realize how fucked up they are and how stupid they've been. But you're absolutely right. We all should care about future generations. Now, Spacer's a younger man, maybe like my son's age or something, or maybe younger than that. And I am thinking about your future and future generations. I've got a granddaughter that's 5. Um, I've got a grandson that's 8 months old. And when they grow up, I won't be around. I just hope things are good for them. I'm particularly concerned about my granddaughter. Now, she's a pistol. She don't take any shit, so she can handle herself. But we're setting this country up to be dangerous for girls and women in the future. And as a grandpa, I gotta figure out a way to protect her even when I'm not here. I mean, her dad will do that too, but grandpa's gotta do something, as long as he can and as long as he's here. So that's what I'm gonna do. Vincent Johnny says, "Wonder how many bad actors the Trump administration are sending into Greenland." Is he off Greenland now? I mean, we haven't heard anything about Venezuela either. Donald Trump is like a kid with ADHD. He gets focused on something, then he loses interest and he goes does something else. He may come back to Greenland, but is he doing anything now? I don't know. He did send some bad actors up there. I think they got their asses kicked out of the country too, because of course they got caught because they're stupid motherfuckers. Um, is there still something going on with Greenland? I think Donald Trump got a little afraid when he went to Europe, when he went to Switzerland, because Europeans and the Scandinavians weren't too happy about him, the prospect of him going into Greenland with the military. I mean, the Europeans basically said, "Listen, you do that, we're gonna sell all your treasury bonds, which could be trillions of dollars that's gonna come out of your ass. We're gonna close your military bases in all European countries, and we're just gonna cut you off completely," which would ultimately destroy the country economically anyway. And, that's when Donald Trump backed down. He said, "Oh, shit, okay. We'll talk about it later." But this should be a sign to people in dealing with Donald Trump. He is a bully. You push back, he backs off. You bend a knee, he just keeps coming and wanting more. Not hard to figure out this guy, but apparently Republicans haven't figured it out as yet. Spacer says currently studying to be in public health, and it's painful to see Trump and RFK destroy public health in this country. Yeah, they're doing all they can to destroy it. We've got a measles outbreak. We just heard something about tuberculosis going on somewhere, all under the watch of RFK Jr., that crazy, goofy motherfucker. Still can't believe Charlie Kirk died the same age as me. Yeah, he was a young guy. Um, but one good thing to remember, it's an old adage: live by the sword, die by the sword. If you're a violent motherfucker, chances are you're gonna die of violence. And let's be honest, with Charlie Kirk's rhetoric, that was certainly violent. Houdiner says the economy is strangely holding. Is this the top propping it up? I sense it's going to fall off the cliff soon. Trump has done so much to hurt it. Not even his supporters can argue that the erratic behavior is tolerated because of some financial benefit. Yeah, it has been propped up for a while. It's okay for the stock market, but the people making the most money in the stock market are the wealthy folks, so that's not surprising. But they are propping it up because they don't want to admit they're wrong. They'll think Donald Trump will back off or he's lying or whatever. But eventually, it's going to fall off the cliff. The oligarchs can only prop it up so long. And that's the unfortunate thing. They're propping it up now and giving us a false sense of security in terms of the economy, and then all of a sudden, it's gonna drop like a fucking rock. Um, I tend to agree with you with regards to that. Um, Donald Trump loves to spout about the economy, and yes, the, stock market is doing okay, but I don't know if you've heard, they were gonna release the January jobs report, but they're now delaying it. You know why they're delaying it? 'Cause of the shutdown, the 2-day shutdown. Now we gotta delay the jobs report. So and I didn't even know that he was gonna release a jobs report. But don't fear about that. Some of the independent companies will put it out there, and we'll find out that there are no jobs being created. Remember, in 4 years, Joe Biden created 15 million jobs in 4 years. Donald Trump, in his first term, lost 250,000 jobs. He lost them, and he hasn't gained any this year either. He's lost jobs for this country. Donald Trump is an absolute failure. Spacer says, I think the difference with the economy now and the Depression back then, we didn't have safety nets and Americans borrowed money like crazy. Yeah, it's a different time. We can't expect something similar to the 1929 Depression or 27, whatever it was. I mean, it'll be something just as bad if we get to that point, but it will be different because everything is different at this point. Everything is much more advanced than it was in the late 20s, but it won't be good. And as much as the economy with regards to the stock market is going well, the people of this country are doing worse. People can't afford things. People are living paycheck to paycheck. 24 million people lost health care. None of this represents a good economy. And this is one of the problems the Democrats had. They spouted about the economy, but still the millennials and Gen Zs couldn't afford to rent apartments, buy houses, buy cars. And that's a real problem because they're going to be taking over the brunt of the economy over the next couple of years. And if none of them can afford to buy anything, our economy is shot. Spacer says, did you see Joe Biden's ex-husband got arrested for murder? Now the MAGAs will try to point and scream saying that the Democrats are violent despite it having nothing to do with her. Yeah, they'll probably jump on that. I think they got divorced in 1970, 71 or something like that. Jill hasn't been married to this guy for, what, 70, 80, 90, to almost 60 years, 55 years, for fuck's sake. Yeah, they'll probably try to make something out of it, but, Donald Trump's in the Epstein files. The Epstein files say Donald Trump raped an underage girl. The Epstein files say that Donald Trump talked about unaliving underage girls. So if you're going to talk about Joe Biden, you need to talk about that shit. Wonder how things will go crazy when the asteroid hits the moon. Asteroid hits the moon. I hadn't heard anything about that. I don't know because I don't know anything about it. If you want a rational plan, tell me the congressional district where you vote after reading this. Okay. I can't access that right now, but those of you out there, by all means, check it out. I mean, in terms of the voting, it's real easy. Don't vote for a Republican, any Republican, because all Republicans are responsible for what's going on today. Some of them will tell you, well, I'm not as crazy as Donald Trump. I didn't believe in everything Donald Trump did, but you voted for it and you supported it. I mean, when the CR cleared today, when the continuing resolution for 2 weeks passed today, no Democrat voted for it. Every Republican voted for it. If it comes down to giving ICE more money, it will be every Republican that voted for it and no Democrat. So we really got to clear out as many Republicans as possible and take any kind of power away from them. Panzer says barrel with straps will soon be the next trend in fashion. Yeah. Rita Graham says looking forward to Clinton's testimony. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. It's interesting. What's interesting about this is they were going to hold Hillary and Bill Clinton in contempt if they weren't going to testify. And then all of a sudden, Bill Clinton and Hillary say, sure, we'll testify. You need to film it and you need to transcribe it so people can look at it. And as far as I know, they agreed to it. Now, I put something out there, and this is just an observation. This is no basis in fact. But knowing the Republicans, I was wondering if they thought about this. Bill and Hillary Clinton are some smart motherfuckers. They may be shady. You may not like Bill and Hillary Clinton, but they are smarter than all those motherfuckers on the Oversight Committee, and they're smarter than Donald Trump. Now, what I suspect is going to happen is since they've agreed to go testify, they're going to be pulling up Donald Trump's name a lot. Donald Trump and the Clintons were friends back in that era, and a lot of the Democrats are going to ask about Donald Trump and Epstein, and they're going to have some inside information. So I'm thinking the Republicans may be sorry about getting exactly what they asked for. I think the Clintons have something planned if they're so anxious to go sit and talk. It's going to be interesting. It's coming toward the end of the month. I think Hillary's the 26th. Bill's the 27th. I don't know what's going to happen with Bill, but we know that Hillary sat for 11 hours testifying about Benghazi, which was a bunch of bullshit, and she tore those motherfuckers up. So this should be entertaining. Also, the pathetic attempt to try to Photoshop or edit in Mondami to Epstein. How old was Mondami in the 90s? 2, 3 years old. There was a mention of Mondami's mother in there, but it was not going to the island. She was an artist or something, and it was something where Epstein ran into her. They weren't friends or anything like that, but they'll try to make something out of it. They're going to do whatever they can to try to distract from Donald Trump, but that's not going to work. It's just not going to fucking work. Donald Trump is in the middle of this. As much as he says he's absolved, he's mentioned 5,300 times, 5,300 times in the latest release of the Epstein files to suggest he's absolved, that there isn't some questions about his participation. There isn't some questions about not only his participation, that he may have been a partner with Epstein in this whole process. Like I said, you can say there's no evidence, but the fact of the matter is, let's have some investigations. Let's investigate all these people like Bill Gates and this Tisch guy that owns the New York New York Giants, I believe. Yeah, football team. There's a lot of people that should be questioned. They should be indicted and take it to trial and see if, in fact, there is evidence. I'm guessing that there is. All right, we're about at that point. I'm going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast and the Substack Live. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to spend time with me here because, as I've said, without you people participating, this is going to be really motherfucking boring. So thank you very much for joining me on the Substack Live. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.